changing our behaviors or developing healthy habits can sometimes feel difficult. And one of the keys to making successful behavior change is making your new behavior feel as easy as possible. If you've ever read James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, this should sound familiar. It's a great book. I recommend picking it up. The big thing that he says, or one of the big things I should say, is to make habit change feel as easy as possible. And one way that we can do that is through what's called habit stacking. And this means that we identify habits that we already have, we already engage in, and we stack on the new behavior to that thing that's already foundational in our life. And I find it helpful to think about routines, not just habits, because habits can sound a little vague to some people, but really we're talking about, what do you do every day? What schedule or typical schedule do you tend to follow? What behaviors or habits are you doing on a daily basis? And use that as your foundation to leverage from to identify a cue for adding your new desired behavior. So for example, I had a client who struggled with some chronic pain from fibromyalgia and really needed to find a way to incorporate stretching into her daily routine. And she looked at her typical daily, habits and realized that she, typically wakes up and brews herself some coffee. And this was a time where she thought she could use it to stretch rather than do other things like scroll on her cell phone. So the next time she woke up and brewed her coffee, she used that as her cue of, I need to stretch. And so for 5 minutes, she stretched at the kitchen counter. And it sounds maybe a little silly to be stretching in the kitchen, but it worked for her because she already had that existing routine and it was time that she could spend taking care of herself. I have another client who wanted to incorporate daily meditation and breathing into his practice because he knew that at work he dealt with quite a bit of stress. And so it was hard for him to find, like, when would he have time to take for himself? And if you're a caregiver, you know that oftentimes the only time you get to yourself is in the bathroom or the shower. And so he chose the shower as his cue. He showered every night. It's part of his existing routine. And he used that as his cue to practice deep breathing. And it became part of his just everyday practice. And then he used that, he built that success to then start adding breathing practices at other times throughout the day. But to get started, he identified the easiest point in his typical routine to add in this new behavior. And really that's what habit stacking is all about. So if you'd like to incorporate this, what I suggest is first starting by identifying the desired behavior or habit that you want to establish and get specific. The more specific we are with the change we want to make, the more likely we are to succeed. And I've talked about this before when I've talked about SMART goal setting. So check that out if you're kind of struggling to even get started with identifying the behavior. So once you know what behavior it is that you want to increase, then map out what it is that you do on a daily basis. And it's helpful to start with a school day or work day. So those days in which you have a lot more structure and which the majority of your days would fall in, because obviously in the weekend things get a little bit sort of changed up. And so start with something that is consistent. So identify what it is that you do, all day. You wake up, you go to the bathroom, maybe you have coffee, maybe you work out or you shower or you commute, but identify how your day maps out, and then choose a point in time where you think it would be easiest to add in your new desired behavior and start with that. Use that as your cue. So the next time you find yourself in that part of your routine, that's when you practice your new behavior and see how it goes. And you can always modify, you can always, change it up. You can always extend. So maybe you think, oh, well, in my first example, stretching for 5 minutes while making coffee, that's just not enough. But when you're starting a behavior, you want to start small. And so it is enough. And perhaps, she would then add on stretching later in the day or be motivated, but she's developed a foundation from which to move. I have more pointers on an article that I posted on habit stacking. Check that out if you want more help with this. It doesn't have to feel overwhelming to change our behaviors, to take care of ourselves, prioritize our health and wellness. It doesn't have to be overwhelming and stressful and cause us to be anxious. There are little science-based changes that we can make to incorporate healthier routines and healthier behaviors that will boost our well-being. For more tips like this, consider signing up for my newsletter, Take 5, where I send out simple science-based solutions for a healthy, happy life.